Welcome to the 116 Life here on Holy Culture Radio, Sirius XM Channel 140. Listen, shout out to everyone who is tuned in right here, right now. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. Listen, this week tried to take me out. You know what I'm saying? Y'all know the seasons are changing, and you know that means the sniffles are coming around, people sneeze and everything, catching it from everybody. And y'all, I'm not gonna lie to you. It tried to catch me. It tried to catch me this week, but I'm not gonna lie. I knew I had to see. It was a new week. I had to see my 116 family, so I made it through. So I'm gonna put y'all up on game right now. I'm gonna be on my Tony Braxton today, because I just want to make sure I got my throat coat tee. Shout out to our producer Joe for hooking me up, making sure that we're all good for this week, and we're so happy that y'all are tapped in. Y'all, speaking of Tony Braxton and amazing singers, listen, we have a great one this week, man. Shout out to Ace. He is out this week, but he sends all of his love as always. But I'm not solo. I have an amazing guest this week, man. I have Lee Vasi here on the 116 Live. Lee, what's going on, girl?
Hey.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Listen, thank you so much for being here.
Of
We're so happy that you were able to stop by and be here. Listen, you've been the one. You've been the one to like watch, and you've just been killing it when it comes to just music, and when it comes to just you releasing things left and right, and Billboard charts, and I've been reading write-ups about you. How has it been just taking all of those things in? Has it been happening fast? Like, is it kind of blowing your mind? Talk to me, what's kind of going through your mind these last couple of weeks, months, when it comes to your career and everything going on?
Yeah, definitely blowing my mind.
Yeah.
Like 1,000%. God has really been just like showing up in such a major, exciting way.
Yeah.
Obviously Faith Without Works is dead, right? So I've been working a lot, but just really so exciting to see the fruits and how people are receiving the things that have been coming out, and just seeing God work. It's been so fun.
Listen, I can't imagine what that's like. You know what I'm saying? Because you work so hard, you put so much in, and just being able to see the fruits of your labor, it's just really, really dope. You seem really driven. I don't know, just like seeing your social media, this is our first time getting the chance to really sit and talk. We were able to meet in passing here at Reach.
Yeah.
But just looking at your social media, you seem real focused, real driven, just making sure people know the music is out, the singles out, making sure people are tapped in. What's driving you and keeping you focused and driven lately?
So honestly, I had a word from God at the beginning of last year to do music. I hadn't been doing music for probably 2 years. I was on a complete detox, trying to figure out where I was going with it, what my purpose was, what God had for me, what God wanted for me and from me. And I asked God at the beginning of 2023, I said, God, what do you need from me? And I heard him say music. And so when I heard that, I didn't really know what to do with it. I said, I hadn't been doing it. I didn't have any plans, hadn't even been writing, wasn't even singing to myself in the car. And God just ended up making a way for it to all make sense. And so when I started putting out this music, it was to go hard with it, and to just be obedient to the word that God had given me. And so yeah, that's what's driving it, really.
Okay, so I'm happy you dove into this, because I read that when you said you took time away from music, and we're going to get into your early years where you were in the arts at a real young age. But and when I read that you took time away, I'm curious. I really want to know why. What led you to not even wanting to sing in the car and things like that? What made you want to just not take a break from music for a little bit?
I was suffering. I was in a really tough place with my mental health.
Okay.
Just different things. Nothing felt like it was going right. I was just lost. And like you mentioned, I had been in entertainment from such a young age. I started performing at 7 and got my first professional gig at 9, and really didn't know who I was outside of what I did, right? Outside of my contributions as a performer, my elevator pitch, right? Of my resume and what I've done and what I could do. And so it just got to a place really where I was, like I said, I was really struggling with my mental health, and I had a therapist that asked me that question, who are you outside of what you do? And at the time, I didn't have an answer for that.
Sheesh.
Yeah, sheesh. And it was even more sheesh that I didn't have the answer. I was like, wait, Like this, it really kind of rattled me. And the pandemic happened and things just were getting really weird and rocky. And I realized I needed to recalibrate and figure out the answer to that question. And so it was at that time that I really was leaning into the Lord and really trying to figure out what it is that he created me for.
Yeah.
And I thought that I was wrong about music being what I was created for. I was like, because I realized that I had kind of made an idol out of success.
Listen.
In the industry.
Yeah.
And God made it so that I was able to have some time with him. I had kind of an isolation period where I was just leaning into him. I was trying different things. I was, I was like, you know what, God, if I was completely wrong about music being what, I was supposed to be doing, like, fine. Like, I surrender my life to you. I want you to show me what's needed. And then ultimately at the end of that kind of period where I did submit everything to the Lord, he came back and so clearly told me, no, like music was right, but just like do it different. Like do it for me though,
That's so,
so yeah.
Man, you said something. Let me put my throat coat down because you said so much just now. That's so importantly, only because so many people, and of course, like, you can test this because of course you went through it. So many people find I had a moment like that where my identity was in solely what I did.
Yeah.
And I was like taking time for God to show that no, like it's not. Was it hard for you to even like to take those steps away from music to, like what was that time period like for you?
Yeah. It was humbling for sure because ultimately the reason why I ended up, I was living in Atlanta at the time. I'm not from Atlanta, but I was living in Atlanta and I had to go back home. Like I had to go back to North Carolina, and that was a very humbling reality for me to like admit. It's not working out, sis. Like you need to go home, and so it was very humbling. It was difficult. I felt like a failure. And I felt like everything that I thought I knew about myself like was completely just wrong, And so, it was tough, but again, it was this kind of like, it was a deconstructing to reconstruct, like period. And it ultimately ended up being the most beautiful thing that could have happened for me. But at the time it was tough, but I always had hope. I was like, I know there's something on the other side of this. There's something on the other side of these struggles. And I want to get to that point. Like I want to like my life again. Yeah. So if this is what's necessary for me to like this life that God created, even though I might not understand right now, like God created me for a reason, and it's not to suffer, right? So let me just get through this. Let me humble myself, go home, and really recalibrate. So it was a lot of spiritual warfare, definitely at that time, to just kind of keep going to get to the other side and believe that there is another side that's like worth working towards. You know?
Yeah. So how did you get your start in music to begin with?
So I'm the youngest of three, and my siblings are also great singers, and so we would always sing in the house. And my brother, my older brother, I have a brother and a sister, but he always was interested in the arts. And so my mom is from New York, so she was always really interested in exposing us to like Broadway and, musical theater. And so she took us to the local theater in Fayetteville, the Cape Fear Regional Theater. And we would just watch the shows. And then my brother, Zach, was like, I want to be in the shows. And so I loved my brother so much and I wanted to do what he did.
Yeah.
And so he would get me ready for auditions and, kind of be my vocal coach and like all of this stuff like when we were kids. And that's how I got involved in theater and performing, like I said, in a local capacity. And I was 7 at the time when I started. And it was a really good kind of training ground for me because then when I was 9, my brother ended up looking for auditions for himself for Broadway shows, ended up finding one for The Lion King on Broadway. And they were casting for young Nala, and the audition was actually in Atlanta. And so my brother was like begging my mom. He was like, you have to take her, but don't take her if you're not ready to move to New York because she's going to get it. Right. And we came down to Atlanta to do the audition. There was like hundreds of other girls. There was an open call. I didn't have any agent or anything, but I kept getting callbacks, and then I ultimately booked the role.
Yeah.
So then we moved to New York.
Yeah.
And I did the show for a year and a half, and it was really just, it opened my eyes up to the fact that this is something that I like to do as a hobby, but like this is also a potential like real viable career path.
Yeah.
And so from the time I was 9, I ended up signing like with Wilhelmina, like they were my agents and stuff. And just like doing the whole like commercial circ, like auditioning for stuff, like really, really pursuing it.
So you were in like in the industry, like for real.
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah. And it was so fun. And I loved it. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about the world, a lot about different kinds of people. And but ultimately my favorite part of all of that was always singing. Like that was my favorite part of theater. And I started writing songs when I was 10 backstage at the Lion King. I was really inspired at the time by like Neo's music that was coming out, like Because of You, like those kind of songs. Yeah. And I was really into like the singer-songwriter thing. I was like, oh, like I can write my own songs. So I got a guitar for my 10th birthday and started, writing songs that way. And so ultimately when I was like 16 is when I decided to focus on music, because I felt like that was the space where I could really create my own kind of archetype, as opposed to like having to fit into a role that somebody else created. Like I could kind of, you know, and I come from a multicultural background. I'm Puerto Rican, Dominican, African American. And so I came from a rich culture and just like appreciation for different kinds of music. And I wanted to figure out how to bring all of that into who I was as an artist. Yeah. And so that's how I started focusing in on music. And we would start coming down to Atlanta to work on music. So Atlanta's always been a really kind of important part of like my journey. Being from North Carolina and also spending time in New York, Atlanta has always been like a really kind of pivotal place for me. And so I ended up going to college in New York and realized that New York was not for me as an adult. Yeah. And ended up running into some just like stressful situations in college that I didn't necessarily know how to navigate. And ended up taking a year off and ended up moving to Atlanta after that. And so that's how I ended up in Atlanta in 2018 for the first time.
So I think you said earlier that you finally answered the call God gave you to do music. So what was it about, what made you want to answer that call now at that moment, opposed to like, what was the difference between the past? You were kind of like, okay, well, you had your reasons why not to, but then when God said yes, you were ready to go.
That's a good question. I think that because I no longer wanted the answer to be music. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I was really open to whatever the answer was from God. I wasn't looking for music to be the answer. And actually, when I heard him say music, I was like, no, like, come on, bro. Really? Like, like, yeah, like, cause I was nervous about, revisiting some experiences that I had that I needed to heal from.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And I was like, no, God, like I'm just now getting back. Cool. Yeah. Like, I don't know. And so then when I moved back to Atlanta at the top of last year, everything just kind of started to flow. And there wasn't so much force and, because I really had given it all to him. Like I really had given my life to him. And so that was the difference, was that it was no longer about like my own ambitions and really just being obedient. So
sheesh, that's so, you keep making me want to put down this mug because Lee, you be saying so, you say so many important things that I resonate with, but even I just know people listening resonate with. Just one, it's the nature of God. I was telling my friend this the other day. It's the nature of God for him to give us, to lay the things in our lap that we don't want to do. Or even the fact that we surrendered and we were, but that's one thing I love that you said that stood out to me, is that you were open to whatever God had. And I'm not even surprised at the fact that he brought you back round to what you were like, okay, I want to do this, but God, whatever you want. And then here it is. We have the Lee we see today. So when we come back, I want to dive more into the New York life, the Broadway life, and even like, you know what, how you got started in music, even the arts and different things like that. I'm excited to see what the genesis of who you are made you into the woman we're currently talking to today. So listen, we have so many more great things here on the 116 Life here on Holy Culture Radio, Sirius XM Channel 140. Listen, don't go anywhere because we'll be right back. And we're back here on the 116 Live here on Holy Culture Radio, Sirius XM Channel 140. Listen, Meah Evans here. And of course, I'm not here by myself. I hear Lee Vasi. Lee Vasi is here on the show with me here today. So we're talking about her life and just how she's able to be, of course, who you are today. I want to know what your upbringing was like. Did you grow up in church? How you got introduced to your faith? I want you to dive into a little bit of that really quick.
Sure. So growing up kind of off and on in church, but really started going to church consistently when I was about 12.
Okay.
But my parents are Christian. My mom actually would sing, she would make, in her lullaby, she would make songs centered around God and like thanking God for the day. So that was always kind of at the center of our family, even though we weren't consistently in church when I was like younger. But I always loved when we went to church. And I had a little kids Bible that my mom gave me. That was my favorite book. That Bible was my favorite book for like my whole childhood. And so I always had like an interest in the Lord and a grounding in, you know, Jesus. And so when I was 14, I did the altar call at a Bible study I went to with my dad. And yeah, like that was always church was always like an ambition in the house, but it wasn't necessarily something that I understood like relationship with Christ until a little later on.
Okay, that's good. So when did I'm curious about how even your relationship with your family and like your siblings. You said like y'all sung a lot, and are your parents like musically inclined at all? Like, did they drive that into you guys, or how did that come about? Like the music ambitions.
So I think both my parents really just love music, and so there was a lot of music in the house. But my dad's mom, actually my grandmother, is very, very creative. She's a dancer. And, you know, that was always something that was encouraged for generations, was to be creative and express yourself. And, but my parents are not musicians. My dad plays a really good air bass.
Oh, great. Shout out to dad.
And my mom really does do some really great lullabies, but neither of them like were pursuing it as a career for themselves.
Yeah. Did you and your siblings have a close bond? Like, did music bring you guys together in any
Definitely.
sense?
Yeah. And so that was something that was always like, that was a non-negotiable. Like, we had to be close. You know, my mom was always very big on like, you all are what y'all have.
Listen,
in this life,
I never understood how people say like, "Oh, I don't get along with my siblings."
Yeah.
Like, I have two other siblings too, and my sister is 2 years older than me. And my dad always said like, "If you don't have a best friend, I gave you a best friend."
Right.
And my siblings are tight. We had a movie night after this. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's like I never understood that. So I love that you. When you say y'all were close and y'all sung, I can only imagine what that bond was like, and even your brother when it comes to Broadway and being able like, yeah, she's gonna be in it. What was that Broadway experience like? Like auditioning? Were you excited about it? Did you think you were gonna get it? Talk about what it was like being on Broadway at 9.
Yeah. So honestly, I don't know if I thought I was going to get it or not. That's a good question. I remember though that it was really hot outside because it was a long line, like literally hundreds of girls out there.
Yeah.
And it was in the middle of the summertime and it was really hot. That's what I remember about the audition experience. I think that at the time I really just loved performing. Like I wasn't necessarily, because I was so young, I don't think that I had like an expectation for it. Right.
Yeah.
And that's something I've learned throughout all of my years, like in entertainment, is like, you cannot have expectations for, you just have to show up and do it. Right. But it's like what God wants to happen is going to happen anyway. But so then when I booked it, it was exciting. I was always a very serious kid. Like my parents will tell you, like, I wasn't a big player. Like,
really?
I was a very serious, driven kid. And so, when I was cast, I was the youngest of the group of cubs that got cast at the time. And I was the most, like, I was very serious and very focused as a kid. And so it wasn't like it wasn't taking me outside of myself to be in like that professional environment so early. But yeah, I mean, I learned a lot from it and take a lot of the things that I learned from it still to this day.
What were some of the biggest takeaways you got from not just even just being on Broadway, but from being submersed in the industry at a young age? What was that even like for you? Was it like a lot of pressure? Like, did you enjoy it, or did you were you able to kind of like let loose and have fun? So what was that experience like, just being in the industry from 9 and then getting signed to Wilhelmina, which is crazy, which is insane to me. But what was that like for you? Like, did you enjoy it more? Was it a lot of pressure on you? Talk about that.
Not pressure. I was having a ball. Like, I literally was like living the life. And I think my parents did a really great job of like keeping me a kid, like, you know, and just being able to enjoy what I was doing. It was, I think if anything, pressure came from me. Like, I always held myself to a really high standard. And I don't know if it's because I'm the youngest, like, also my siblings are very high achieving too. So it was just kind of like what we did, you know what I'm saying? And that's actually how I was raised. Like, it's funny, my dad would, you know, if we came home with like all A's or something, he's like, yeah, that's what you're supposed to do, you know?
Right.
So I was like that as a kid. I would still have fun, you know, and just enjoy, you know, the moments. And I went to school still. Like, it's not like I didn't, like, it's not like I wasn't a kid in the middle of all of it. But yeah, it was dope.
What was it? What were your biggest takeaways? I know I said that in the beginning part of the question. No, I feel like I gave you a lot just then. But what was your biggest takeaway being in the industry at such a young age? You said you observed a lot and you learned a lot.
Probably biggest takeaway, be kind to everyone, you know?
Yeah.
Probably biggest. And also, like, being in a company like Disney, that was a part of the company culture, right? It was like a very just, you know, kind environment, and just honoring people around you, respecting everybody. Also just being a part of theater, just generally, right? Like, everybody is so necessary for the show to go on, right? Like, nobody here is more important than anybody, you know? Very similar to like a team, right? Like, it's its own version of a team. Exactly. Yeah. And so, that was probably my biggest takeaway, is just respect everybody, and honor them for all of their contributions.
I want to talk about your parents a little bit, because your parents were, I was reading just how supportive they are. And sometimes you have parents who, they say just little things like pipe dreams and things like that. But then you have parents like yours that are like, oh no, let's go after it. And like, it'll have your support. What was it like embracing that support at a young age, and then even now being able to have their support where you are in your career with music and all of your endeavors?
So I think at a young age, I didn't really get it, right? But I did understand that our family was sacrificing for this, right? Because when I went to the Lion King, like, the whole family didn't go, right? Like, it was me and my mom and my sister for the first 6 months, and my dad and brother stayed in North Carolina, and then they would make trips to come up and, you know, see me and stuff, or and then my sister ended up leaving after the first 6 months, so then it was just me and my mom, and in New York, and then my brother, sister, and dad in North Carolina. So I recognized the family's sacrifice for that, and at times I felt bad about it, to be real. Like, I felt bad that I was kind of the cause of it, right? But I'm very blessed that everybody understood kind of like, you know, what God was doing through it. And then as an adult, actually, I had, before I moved back to Atlanta, I went to my dad and I said, Dad, you know, and this was before I had the word about music, right? Yeah. But I said, Dad, you know, I'm at a place where I'm the most at peace I've ever been, but I'm the most lost I've ever been, right? I don't know what I'm doing for real. Like, you know, my mental health is good. Like, everything is kind of balancing out, but like, I'm lost and I don't know what to do about it. And he was like, I'm always going to let you do what you're going to do for your journey, right? You have to go on your journey. But I always thought that you stopped doing music too abruptly, right? Like nobody does what you've done for as long as you've done it.
Yeah.
And like just stops. Like obviously you love it. Like just try it. Just pick up, your equipment and like see what comes from it, So actually my dad was a huge part of just kind of planting that seed. I think God used him that day in that conversation to even make me start thinking about music again. So the theme of their support it goes beyond just like, making me feel good as a kid, or like, my parents are cool. It's like they have been they have also been obedient in their support of it, and the way that they've kind of, that they've guided me when I've needed it.
Yeah. I want to talk about, because you said something that I thought was important, that we all went through, that good old panorama, that pandemic was something special. And I can't lie to you, there are days where I think like, did we really go through that? Like were we all like awake?
Felt like
that?
a fever dream, right?
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you were talking about how that just, what toll did that have on you? Mentally, and then even in a creative sense as well.
So prior to the pandemic, I was already struggling with my mental health. Like I was already in a place of just like imbalance. And when the pandemic happened, because then I was also using kind of session hopping and hustling to like distract myself from like what was already kind of brewing in my mental health space. And then when the pandemic happened and, the studio shut down for a while, like all the, everything stopped, I had no choice but to sit there in the struggle for real.
Yeah.
And so I think the pandemic didn't create anything new, but if anything, it just like exacerbated what was already there and like made me have to really reckon with it and like make a choice whether I wanted to do something to like fix it or not. So
So what got you through that time?
Initially therapy.
Shout out to therapy.
I was really blessed to have a therapist that was really holistic in her approach to healing. And that relationship encouraged me to get back in my word and have the clarity to actually want to hear God's voice again. You know what I'm saying? And really like give up my kind of rebellion. Because if I'm honest with myself, a lot of what I was suffering from was like a product of like, I was just rebelling and like wanting to do what I wanted to do, and it just wasn't working out. So, therapy was really, really instrumental in that. And then I think when I got to a place probably like October of 2021, because I moved back July of 2021 to North Carolina. Probably around October was where I started to see like, this is getting better. And I thought that it would never, right? Like I was in a kind of cycle where extreme highs, extreme lows. And I was starting to see myself kind of balance out. And that was a combination of my faith and therapy.
Yeah. I shout out One Therapy. Because in the church where we think, some people think low of therapy.
Yeah.
And I love that you said that when you had a therapist and it brought you back to your word. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And people think so that they think that if you're in therapy, something's wrong with you and you should just pray it away.
Yeah.
But the fact that you still had God and you still had he led you to a resource like therapy, was able to even help get you out of one of the most unique times in the world that we ever saw.
Yeah.
So I think that's beautiful. So when we come back, I want to talk about the music because when I tell you, I've been jamming this week, y'all, and I feel we have the perfect, of course, the creator and the mindset behind those amazing tracks. We're gonna talk about. I can't wait to dive into the music right back here on the 116 Live here on Holy Culture Radio, Sirius XM Channel 140. Listen, don't go anywhere. We have Lee Vasi here. We'll be right back. And we are back here on the 116 Live here on Holy Culture Radio, Sirius XM Channel 140. As always, we have Lee Vasi here on the show. And listen, we're going to talk about the music. Okay, listen. Y'all, Lee is an amazing artist, and she's been making so much noise. I want to dive into one song specifically, and that's Teach Me. And I've just seen so many different, you've gotten so many shares. I was on YouTube the other day and you came up in my recommendations and I saw you were at like almost 500,000 views for Teach Me. And it's just like, I'm curious to what makes you think people resonate so much with that song.
Based on the comments, right, the DMs, I think people really just there's been kind of like it's time to balance out like the marketplace of like what we sing about and how we sing about love. And I think people have just been really resonating with the vulnerability of the song, where it's like, I need help here. This person is not a bad person. But I just don't understand this person right now. I think it's just really hitting home for both men and women.
No, for sure. Because listen, Lord, I'm not perfect, but neither is this man you didn't get.
Right.
So like, I feel a lot of people can resonate with that. And I love that you said even relationships, because I feel like sometimes people, Christian artists specifically, they try to stem away from relationships and as if it's like a bad thing. And I truly just don't think it is. What do you think? What's your take on that? Like just bringing in relationships and bringing that vulnerability, the vulnerable side of relationships. Like, do you feel like it's necessary? Just speak on that a little bit.
I definitely feel like it's necessary. Look, God is love. Yeah. And created love and created us to love each other, right? To be a reflection of him to one another. So like with Teach Me, it really was just like, I wasn't even writing that for an audience. That was a real life conversation that I had with God, where I was having a situation in my relationship where we just weren't understanding each other. And I was praying about it. And the Holy Spirit instructed me to not pray to change this person that God created to fit my selfish needs, but rather for me to pray to understand this person that God created.
That's a bar.
In this specific way on purpose. In this, like, God created me in a specific way on purpose, like he created all of us. And so that was a real just moment from prayer that that ended up becoming what Teach Me is as a song. So I think that I would love for there to be more conversations about love with God at the center, and for music to kind of be a place for that to reach people. Yeah, because I don't think it's anything wrong for us to be able to have songs like that, but I think when we try to take God out of it, and but another thing I love is the fact that you said how it was real. This was a very real conversation you had, and I always say what comes from the heart reaches the heart. So because that's what came from your true, authentic heart's cry, so many other people, men, women alike, were able to resonate with that song. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I was talking to Lee off air, y'all, and I was talking about this voice she got, and I was like, what training have you had? And she was saying how, like, well, basically she was just kind of born this way. No. But no, so talk a little bit about how you even like because I don't know, it's something about your voice where you say you used to belt out songs, and you had something about your voice that's like, it's light, but yet it holds weight and power. Did you ever have to like grow into your voice and like, coming from theater and then going into like, your own artistry where you don't have to, I went to a performing arts high school, so I know what comes with like singing in theater in front of an audience opposed to like, just singing, I guess, regular in a sense. What was it like being able to adjust your voice from theater to then who you want your being Lee Vasi into your music and for what you want your career to be? So actually, I love this question. Nobody's ever asked me this before, I think. But so actually, when I first started coming down to Atlanta when I was 16 to record my own songs that I had written, was the first time that I learned that you sing different on stage than you do in a recording session in a booth, right? And so that was really where I first started to understand like, oh, okay, like let me, chill on the vibrato a little bit. Let me approach this a little softer because the mic is right here. I'm not singing out, So that was kind of when my first experience of realizing that. But ultimately, I think that there had to be a time as a songwriter where I found my own voice, because like you mentioned, like with theater, like you're singing a song that somebody else has written, for a role that somebody else has written.
Yeah, right.
And so I had to figure out like the way that I wanted to share my stories. Right. And, like specifically with this new music that's coming out, it's very intimate. Like I'm literally just like, these songs were written like in my bedroom, like literally from me to God. And cause again, I didn't even have a plan for like what the releases of this music would look like, or even an expectation of it being received at all. And it was just coming from a place of that vulnerability. And so I think that especially with the approach to the way that I'm recording these songs right now, it's to really kind of illustrate that like this is really just coming from the heart and it's intimate.
Yeah, speaking of coming from the heart, I love the lyrics of Your Will. Talk about what the inspiration was behind those lyrics for that song.
Well, thank you. But I was actually reading the Bible, and it was one of those days where I was just kind of, so I'm on a journey to read the Bible in a year, right? So it's like a 52-week like guided study.
Right.
So I'm reading it every day, but this was a day where I was like, let me just like see where I land.
Yeah.
And I landed on 1 Peter 4:10, which is where that first lyric came from in the verse. And then I also saw that it correlated to Matthew 10, right? Where speaking of light, what we learn in the darkness, right? And so I was like, it made me think about my mental health journey, about things that I had learned when I was in the darkness, and now things that I want to shed a light on, to maybe help somebody else come out of the darkness. And what really did that was me giving my will up and wanting to live according to God's will for my life. So then Your Will just kind of ended up writing itself. And I actually was sitting there on my couch, writing it and recording it. And when the first melodies started coming out, I was like, really, God? Like, I literally was like, it's going to be like that, because Your Will kind of ended up writing itself after I got that inspiration from those Bible verses. Your Will is one of my favorites.
Listen, I love when the word can be able to speak through music. You know what I'm saying? Because you can hear that. You hear that. And not only did it sound so rich, but yet even also the word inside of it was so rich. When it comes to Your Will, there was a lyric you said, and I have it right here. It says, "Can you make sense of what I've been through?" Did you ever have like a moment like that personally where you're kind of like, Lord, you got to make some sense out of this,
Girl.
you know, like talk about that. Did you ever have a moment where that kind of hit you, where that was able to come through in the music?
Yes. I probably had like 3 years of my life of like, Lord, like none of this is making sense. Like I was really living in like a chaotic headspace for probably like 3 years of my life, and just like making bad decisions, like making bad relationships, like just like not healthy, you know? And ultimately, you know, God doesn't ever end on a negative, right? Yeah. And so I'm in a place now where like everything has made sense. Like all of it makes sense. And now I'm glad that I went through all of it, even though it was tough, because God is going to always get his glory. Yeah. So to your question, did I? Yes, for about 3 years. I was asking that.
Okay, so you said something, and I got to ask you is about this new music you're talking about. So what can you tell us about what you have coming up for the rest of the year? Like, can you tell us about if there's a direction you're going in, a song you're excited about that you're waiting to release? Just tell us what else can we expect? Because you already start off the year off on the right track.
Yeah, you know, Meah, there's a lot that I'm excited about this year, given the way that God has started it out. There's a lot of things that are kind of shifting and pivoting. You know, we've been really plan oriented, like how you mentioned, you know, like the consistent posting and, you know, content, like that's on purpose. Yeah. But now we're having to shift some things, given the fact that so many people have been introduced to this music now.
Right.
So all I can really say is I'm just excited to see God continue to work and like give me some cool song ideas. This past week, I started writing again, and there's just gonna keep being more music, and I hope that it just like continues to just glorify God and move the way that he wants it to move. Because we can plan all we want to, but ultimately he gonna make happen what's supposed to happen.
Exactly.
But I'm really, really excited about this year, and
we're excited, man. I'm excited. I know I've definitely locked in, and a lot of other people are too. You said something I want to ask about. So are you still reading the Bible within a year?
Yeah.
How has that been?
You know, it's been really fun. Like, so I've never read the Bible in a guided capacity.
So are you doing like the YouVersion thing, or you have like a book or something like that?
It's a book. I forget who the author is, but it's a 52-week like guided Bible journey that like also has like questions for you to like ponder on and things like
I love
that. And so it's been really fun. I'm really leaning into the Old Testament. This morning I just finished 2 Samuel.
Okay.
So it takes you through like books, but it also will jump you around every now and then, because you know sometimes the Old Testament can be a little heavy.
Yes.
You know?
Girl.
So like it's like at the right time she'll be like, no, go read Psalms, go read Proverbs, you know. But I've had a lot of revelations and really learning a lot about God's nature.
Share some of those revelations.
A lot. So I guess I'll start from the beginning, Genesis. I had a kind of an aha moment where God came to Cain right before he killed his brother. And God said, and I'm paraphrasing, but sin's desire will be for you, but you must master it. And then next verse, he kills his brother, right? And for me, it made me think about like how God will try to give you like, hey, look at me, 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 because he knows what's coming your way, right? He knows what the enemy is trying to send to you, trying to, you know, get you to do. And we know how that story ends, right? But then when you see like the pattern of the importance of obedience throughout these people's lives. Yeah. That's the other thing. We often talk about people in the Bible like they're characters.
Yeah.
These are real life people who had these real life experiences with God and these real life consequences of disobedience, right? And there's this pattern here, like God is very, very consistent, you know? And he loves us so much. And that's why obedience is good. It's not to be to restrict us or to stop us from having a good life. It's actually so that we can have a good life and have like everlasting life with him, you know? So there's been a lot, but right now that's the thing that's coming to mind, is just like the pattern of the way that obedience is really for your good. It's not for God to be a bully or to keep you. It's like, please, like he loves you so much. Just listen to him, please, you know? But yeah, it's been a really cool journey. I'm on week 18. Yeah. So I'm almost halfway.
That's so good. I've been diving in a lot more too. I did a YouVersion one with the Bible in the year, but girl, I'm in the Old Testament now too. Like I'm in Isaiah, and when I tell you God was ready to be done with us, and but it's I wanted to ask you that because even aside from, like, of course we talk about the, music career, things like that, but you live this life, you know what I'm saying? Like you live a 116 life where, there wouldn't be any music, anything that you do because God influences that. So I'm encouraged even by you sharing you studying the Bible and things like that. I'm so happy we're able to have you on. Before you go, do you have any just like any final words of encouragement, last final things you want to leave with everybody listening?
Words of encouragement, maybe. I would just encourage anyone to, if you're going through anything that you're struggling with, whether it's mentally, with your family, relationships, trust God to get you to the other side of it. Because there's always another side of it, especially when you like allow him to be at the center of it and lead it. And life is worth living, especially when you have him on your side and as your guide. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Now, for people who are like, okay, now she talked about music, all these things. I like her. I want to follow. I want to tap into the music. How can people be able to keep up with you?
Sure. So I'm on Instagram and TikTok at Lee Vasi, Leeleevasi. That's how you spell it. And on YouTube, just type in Lee Vasi, and Spotify, Apple Music, everything. You can find my music everywhere. So
yes. Listen,
I hope y'all like
tap
it.
in, please. Listen, I know the year start off right, and she got more for us. So listen, make sure y'all are tapping in to everything Lee's got going on, and make sure you guys, of course, be back here next week here on the 116 Live. Of course, y'all, I'm Meah Evans. I'm here with Lee Vasi here on the 116 Live here on Holy Culture Radio, Sirius XM Channel 140. Thank y'all again for tuning in, and as always, we'll see you guys next week.